speech contestant, Emily Corcoran, the teddy bear. The teddy bear, Emily Corcoran.
Fellow Toastmasters, dignitaries, and guests. A teddy bear is a popular children's gift at birthdays, at Christmas, and if it's a girl, Valentine's Day. But this little teddy bear is not a gift that every child receives. When I was 6, I was able to get my first teddy bear, not much bigger than that, blue, and he had blue and white striped legs. I treasure him to this day. But as I think back on my childhood began long before I was born. In fact, it began on May 21st, 1930, in a small farmhouse in southern Minnesota, when my father, Joseph Phillips, was born. Now, Minnesota is legendary for its thunderstorms, and it was a whopper of a storm that day. It was the deluge of rain, lots of hail, and lots of wind. And it sounded like the storm wanted to come into the house where my grandmother was in labor. The doctor was called out. Now keep in mind, in 1930, doctors did make house calls. He delivered my dad and then left without leaving my grandmother a birth certificate. My father was born into a family with 2 loving parents, 3 brothers and 2 sisters. He was also born into a family that was extremely poor. Remember, 1930 was the Great Depression, and money was very scarce. My grandmother, every time she bought a bag of flour, it came in a bag that had a fabric bag. And she would wash that up, cut it apart, and sew flour sack curtains and flour sack dresses for herself. My father didn't know he was poor, though. He had everything he needed with his family. He had a place to live, a roof over his head every single winter night, clothes to wear, food to eat, and a great sense of faith. When my father became a young man in his 20s, it was 1956, he was already taking on the profession of his father, which is being a farmer. Now this is his dream job. It was his passion and his vocation. He took great pleasure in all the years that he tilled the land, in knowing that the food that he raised would feed people around the world, especially the third world. He met my mom, Martha, at the Mankato Ballroom. He went every Friday and Saturday night to go dancing. And my mom had the audacity to be sitting in his booth that night. But they met in April, and in November, they married. And they went on to raise 5 children, I being the youngest. My father sacrificed his entire life, and he made sure that we have things he never had as a child. His life followed the seasons. In the spring you would plant. In the summer you would tend what you planted. In the fall you would harvest. And in the winter you would plan the next growing season. He taught us the principles of hard work, character, and integrity. In 1997, my father was now 67, and I was newly engaged. It was also December, which meant my family had that difficult choice to face. What do we get Dad for Christmas? I never found it a hard question, because I did something they never did. I walked into the front room. My dad was sitting in his recliner, reading the newspaper. Dad, what do you want for Christmas? He put the paper down, looked thoughtful, and then he surprised me by saying, "I want a teddy bear." It took me back on my heels a bit, because at that moment I realized the degree of sacrifice that he had made his entire life for his family. Well, I quickly ran into the kitchen, I told my mother, and she was astonished as much as I was. And then she promptly did what a project manager does. She gave me the duty to go buy it. In 1997, we had a great toy store chain called KB Toys. And they always had teddy bears, the most wonderful teddy bears in the whole world. Small ones and big ones. And yes, I bought the big brown bear. That was to be my mother's Christmas gift to my father that year. Christmas Day came, and being the youngest daughter, I also had an obligation. My whole family was around the Christmas tree, and it was always my job to hand out the gifts. So it was with great honor I gave my father his very first teddy bear for Christmas. And the look on my father's face was joy. The years had wiped away the wrinkles. And as I looked at his face, he was that same 6-year-old that I was so many years later when I got my first bear. Now my father put that bear in a place of honor, where it is today, in a recliner chair next to the television, in the front row. Now grandkids have been born and great-grandkids have been born. They all can play with the bear if they're careful and they don't take it out of the front row. Every time I look at a teddy bear now, I think how important this simple toy was to my father, a toy he had never had. When you were thinking about getting someone a gift, make it a gift they will treasure. Mr. Tesman.